Okay, it worked. Hello, we are live. Yay! Welcome. This is Babylon 5, Season 4, as done by Babble for 5.
We're gonna wrap it all up in one cute, nice little package with a bow on top.
Like we try to do every week in 5 minutes. And
Yeah.
this season, would you agree that this was harder than ever?
Well, I mean, the story gets deeper than ever. So yeah, I mean, it is harder because there's just so much more ground to cover.
Yeah, this season is super intense. And if we're looking at the story structure, it makes sense that this season is really, really amped up because we're in the action phase. Boy, there was a lot of it.
Yeah.
Now, that makes a lot of sense. However, that all said, this was a very intense season for a number of reasons. The biggest one of which is they thought the show was canceled after this
Yeah.
season. So JMS really had to wrap up a lot of loose ends, and you can kind of tell.
Yes. So, as we dive into this conversation, by the way,
Yes.
we want you guys who are watching to ask questions too. Like, we're going to start the
absolutely.
conversation here, but don't think you can't chime in with some questions or thoughts or concerns or ideas or rants.
Oh, yeah.
We're ready for your side.
100%. And we see you out there. Hi, Andrew Luke. Thank you so much for joining us, as well as the rest of you who are here. Please say hello. We want to know who's here and who took the time to show up. And thank you for doing so. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah. So to get back to your point,
yeah,
this is, we had, I've mentioned it several times this season, we had some great series finales this season. We really did. I mean, we had at least three series finales in this season alone, and yet we're still going forward with a season 5. So go figure.
What do you think about that as a first timer? Is that weird?
It was a little weird because there were so many just times where it's like, oh, they're gonna stop here. And then they're gonna stop here. Oh, how can they do anything? Like, it felt like everything was leading up to these moments, and then you had these moments, and it was like, where do they go from here? And at the same time, though, then you'd watch the next episode and you'd be like, oh, that's where they're going. Okay. And it never felt like forced, it always felt like a natural continuation of the story. But at the same time, there were definitely significantly more peaks of action. There was just more to get done.
Yeah, lots of peaks and valleys in season 4. Let's do a very quick recap of all that happened. We had 2 wars resolved. We had Garibaldi getting mind effed.
Yes.
And that created a lot of tension between him and Sheridan, especially.
Absolutely.
We have Sheridan starting off the season dead-ish.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that happened.
Yeah, dead captain is dead.
Only to come back, but he only gets 20 more years, and so he kind of jumps the gun, gets hitched, and then by the end of the season, he's married. We have Marcus pining for Ivanova, who just cannot reciprocate his love. Although she should have boffed him just once.
Pity boff.
Pity boff.
Yes.
Let's see, what else? Lita plays an instrumental role in the Civil War, the Earth Civil War, to use telepaths in that cause, but also against the Shadows.
Sure.
We can't forget that.
Sure.
Playing a very thankless role.
Of course.
Let's see, what am I missing here? There's so much. The Minbari Civil War.
Minbari Civil War was in the middle of all that. And then, yeah, I mean, then an epilogue at the end of it all.
Oh, right.
Where we see 10,000 years into the future. So
yes, humanity's future, very Vorlon-esque. And then the sun goes nova and goes out, as Sinclair mentioned long, long ago.
Yes. So Daniel, Darman, Tillian, awesome that you're here.
Hi, guys.
I can't speak to Lord of the Rings. I'm sorry.
There's a lot of parallels. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen the first of the trilogy, and that's it. And that was 15 years ago. I feel really bad. I feel really out of touch with that circle. But thank you for making the parallel.
Oh, there's a lot. We ought to, at some point, sit down and watch all the movies, because I haven't watched them all either. I had a really bad experience watching the first movie, actually. I went to go see it with a friend when it came out in 2001, right?
Something like
I think that's when that happened. Yeah, it was in a shabby movie theater with horrible seats. And you know that these movies are long, 3 hours, like minimum, right?
I see where this is going.
So after about 2 hours, my tailbone just started saying, what the hell are you doing? This is not a comfortable chair. It's time to go. And by the end of it, my rear end hurt so bad that I swore off seeing any of the rest of the Lord of the Rings movies in a theater out of fear for my butt.
It's probably not a bad idea.
Probably hurt. There's no nice way to say it. So, yeah, we ought to, in the privacy and comfort of our own home, watch those just because there is a lot that JMS pulls from Lord of the Rings and that mythology. You can see so many parallels. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yes. Okay. So there's so many places where we can start, but one thing that I do want to ask you is, with all that happened, what were some of the biggest surprises? You know, being the first timer, I kind of remember what my surprises were. What were yours?
So let's start, I guess, with the Shadow War, the end of the Shadow War.
Okay, that's a good place.
I think that it was, I expected, because, you know, y'all know this by now, not a huge sci-fi person. Just haven't, it's never been in my circle. So all the sci-fi things that I've really watched before have all ended very, like, action-packed and, like, very dramatically with, you know, when the Death Star explodes.
Sure.
And I was expecting something like that to signal the end of the war. And we talked about it in that episode that didn't happen, and I'm glad it didn't happen, but it was really surprising at the same time that it didn't happen.
Subverted those expectations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was very surprised by your reaction, because I think the general thought was, oh, that's how they're ending this thing? And I love the way that you put it off camera, is just like, they ended the war with a nice chat.
Yes, they ended the war with a nice chat, which, I mean, not what I expected from a series that has had action and has kind of relied on that. And then all of a sudden it wasn't, but at the same time, it also forces you to go back and think about all the times this series has, you know, done the opposite, you know?
Sure.
And I've referenced it before. I've talked about it, I think, at every season ending chat that we've had like this, is that this show continues to, like, show how much more it is than just a sci-fi show, right?
Yeah, that's why I wanted you to watch it so bad.
It continues to do that all the time, over and over again. And I shouldn't have been surprised. I shouldn't have been surprised by the way it ended. It really kind of caught me off guard, but at the same time, again, it makes you appreciate what the show is, because it does subvert your expectations, and I like that. I like shows that don't play by the templates and and that really throw you off and make you think. And as a storytelling device, I appreciate that. So,
it really shows off just what a good writer Joe is, because he is constantly subverting expectations. He's also got this whole world inside his head and can just basically write an episode on demand. I mean, he wrote the entirety of the 3rd and 4th seasons all on his own, because there was no way he had enough time to explain to somebody else as a freelancer, hey, you need to hit this, when you can just fetch it out of his brilliant little head and put it on paper. That's why he did it. Now, I think he suffered a lot as a result of doing all of that work, but ultimately, I think it was the best way to tell the B5 story, just because of all these plot lines that are freaking going on.
Yeah, I mean, how do you keep that straight? And how do you keep that straight without, and another thing that I want to appreciate before we can get back to the season 4, but just,
and then I want to get to comments.
The entirety of what I've seen from Babylon 5 is there are very few, like, I don't want to call them plot holes, but like continuity errors, maybe.
Oh, this happens all the time.
Yeah,
right?
There's very little of that in Babylon 5. And you know, one of our shows that we like to watch all the time is The Office.
Yeah.
And we're both listening to the Office Ladies podcast right now. And
check it.
It's a whole thing. But we talk about the continuity errors in that show, like, you know, who started at Dunder Mifflin first, Jim or Pam? And because you get different answers from that show, and I haven't run into that in Babylon 5. Not that doesn't exist, but as a first time viewer, those aren't hanging me up. They're not distracting me, and that's really, really cool.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, Straczynski has his crap together for sure. He mapped out as much as he possibly could, even before he was pitching the show, which was a years-long process.
Right.
So, dude's got it together. He showed everybody how it was done, and shows that have come that came a few years later, like Lost comes to mind, that had so many plot holes and abandoned storylines, where that was exhausting. I watched it for Mira Furlan, and then after her character, R.I.P., I was just kind of...
Spoiler alert.
Okay, guys, well, the show, it's been going on for... Yeah, okay, I get the hypocrisy. I'm such a freaking Nazi in the comments about spoilers, and here I am spoiling Lost for you all. I'm sorry. I have failed. Let's get to some comments, shall we?
But I like Andrews. Yes, Shadows of Orlans, pot of tea and some cake. That's exactly how it went down.
It kind of was a little bit, sort of like when Sheridan and Anna go to Zahadum, and there's Justin here. Have some tea and some crumpets, and let's have a little chat, shall we? Yeah, and then basically it's Sheridan and Delenn saying to their parents, the parent aliens, I suppose, get out of here. We're emancipated now.
Yes.
Gotta love it. Yes, so Dharma comment about it's a war of ideologies. I think a lot of wars are, right? That's what it all breaks down to, and it breaks down to the, I suppose you could say, more boring aspect of it, which is talk and trying to compromise and resolve differences, which doesn't end in pew, 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 pew. So I love that you appreciated that so much, because we got plenty of pew, pew, pew with the Earth Civil War. And the conclusion of that, this was a very different thing. Also, midway in the season, not even for a mid-season break, it's episode 6, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's happening. But again, I think that's a part of just it being so rushed.
Right. And I think that one of the things that comes out of this season, one of the things that comes out of this season as well is what we see with Jakar. And like his continued transformation. And I think we talked about it in one episode where Londo has further to go than Jakar does.
We did
and
say that.
They're kind of always tied to the hip, but Jakar's transformation continues to like go back to those things that we were just talking about, like fighting that ideological war, because the Narn were a race that was just obliterated, but they're going to continue to fight because that's what you have to do, right?
The Shadows would say that.
And so that's what I mean. But eventually, I mean, if you want to live, to steal a phrase from America, live free or die. And so he was continuing to find ways where his people could live free without having to fight for that. And that transition has been really kind of interesting to watch.
Oh yeah, and Londo and Jakar, Peter Jurasik and Andreas Katsoulis, man, can't imagine anybody else in those roles playing those characters so beautifully. They really are tied at the hip.
Yes.
Yeah, they at the end of season 4, they're in a really interesting place where they have been working together a lot of times behind the scenes, right? Just because so much else is going on, we don't see them working together, but we know that they are trying to rally up the League of Non-Aligned Worlds and get them on board for the Interstellar Alliance. And they're kind of like this odd couple now. Like I'm particularly thinking about the scene where Jakar's eating rice and they have this banter. Why would you be eating it when they're throwing it at people? Can it really be that good? That's a horrible impression, but hey, the magic of live here.
Yes.
Let's hit into the comments here. We've got all sorts of things going on. Hello, Pete Evans. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm glad you made it. And I'm so sorry, Darren, if I spoiled anything about Lost. I'm hoping you're rewatching it and watching it again. If I ruined it, well, I'll let you put maybe one spoilerish thing into the comments. I have had a lot of people say that they've felt restrained about putting comments into the channel out of fear of it being deleted because they don't want to spoil things. And I get that because we've got it all in our heads. We know what happens. And it's hard to remember on an episode by episode basis where things are at.
Yes.
That's been my hardest job, I think. But I do appreciate you restraining to a point, and at the same time, I want you to chime in. I want you to say what's on your mind. I love our conversations. I've said many times before, but I'll say it again. When we come into like Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening, whenever we settle down and look at comments and there's a whole bunch of them waiting for us, it's like Christmas presents. We're like, oh my God, look at what all these guys are saying. They watched and they had something to say, and we're flattered every freaking time because this is just a little show. We knew we weren't going to get like big on YouTube or anything like that, but we had no idea if anybody was going to find us or care, or if people were just going to be a-holes. We had no idea. No, you guys are awesome. We're all here to share this experience and enjoy this show that's so amazing still 25 plus years later. And it's been a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Yes. Well, and full disclosure, right now, we did start season 5. Behind the curtain, I watched the first couple, 6. I wasn't going to give a specific number.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to get the timetable down.
Spoiler alert. So I've watched the first third or quarter of season 5. So if you want to have like early season 5 spoilers,
that's okay.
Don't worry about it. So it's okay.
You see Andrew's comment.
We're just jumping into the chat right now. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
So yeah, and Pete Evans makes a good point here. Thinking about what if you were the one who actually created this show?
Oh,
what if you actually created the universe and the characters and no one watched and no one cared?
Yeah.
And
oh my God, that would be. Yeah, I think that's honestly something that a lot of creators worry about. You get attacked on so many fronts. One, you could be totally overlooked and ignored, or people are just bashing the crap out of you. And especially with something big like Star Trek or Star Wars, we're seeing a lot of the quote unquote toxic fandom.
Yes.
I see that a lot less in Babylon 5. And I don't know if that's because it's a product of being a 90s show and a lot of time has passed, or if it's just a testament to a good community. Back in the day when B5 was starting up, I don't think I've told you what JMS was doing to rally support. One, he and the cast and well, not the crew, but the cast would go to conventions and talk and promote the show early on. But he also used the internet back in the day. Yeah, the days of CompuServe. Ring a bell for anybody? It was that, and it was the Usenet groups, and there were AOL chats with the cast. I mean, it was kind of a fun and more innocent time for the internet.
Sure. And I think part of what, I keep coming back, I said it a couple times already on previous shows and whatnot. I haven't said it today, but I have so much respect for like the fans of this show. It's really like changed my perspective on that fandom, because I have my own fandoms. They're completely separate from entertainment and from television. Like I have my fandoms, but we're so similar, right? In like the passion you bring to something, and I think a part of it is, I'm gonna get on my JMS soapbox here a little bit.
Do it.
Which is that he had something to say, right?
Oh yeah.
He really had something to say, and so the world that he created was nothing more than a vehicle for saying the things that he needed to say and wanted to say. And when you've got something to say, people will be with you, right? People will join with you on that journey. And even somebody who's not into aliens and spaceships and all, like, the trappings of sci-fi.
Jump gates.
Yeah, jump gates. Right. Right. Even somebody who isn't into that will go along for the ride if you've got something to say. And he had something to say.
Big time. One thing I want to address in the comments is, yes, there's definitely a little bit of bad blood between Deep Space Nine fans and Babylon 5 fans.
Oh, sure.
I'm not sure if I've fully explained why that is.
A little bit, but...
Okay, we can do that off camera. I'll tell you the full story.
Right.
But yeah, there is that aspect of things, and it's unfortunate, and I'm glad that both shows kind of became their own thing. But yeah, how that kind of went down was a little shitty. I'll say that much.
Well, and one of the things that I've come to realize too about Babylon 5, and this is, I know we have probably some Star Trek fans in the room as well.
No doubt.
But I think when you look at like early Star Trek, and again, coming from a place of how many full episodes of Star Trek have I ever watched in my life? 2? Maybe 2 or 3, maybe. And some movies, because she needed someone to go with her. Right?
Well, yeah, you have seen all the Kelvin films because we went to the theater to see those. And yeah, you've watched Star Trek's 2, 4, and I think I made you watch First Contact.
Right. And so but like early Star Trek, I'm talking like Spock and Kirk,
the original
Star Trek. A lot of those episodes were resolved by, Kirk punching someone out or getting the girl.
I mean, that's very much an archetype, but you're not entirely wrong either.
Okay. Yes. So Babylon 5 really hasn't ever done that. It's never been, let me win the fight by, punching someone.
Very rarely.
Yeah, it just doesn't really, like, it's not physical superiority. It's not, wooing someone. It's outsmarting people and like and with bigger goals in mind. There's always like a bigger picture at play, and sometimes I think other shows lose sight of that maybe. And maybe he never did. I think that's a big part of it. So when you bring in somebody, like I'm looking over my notes from season 4, and you bring in somebody like Cartagia.
Oh, we ought to talk about the insanity that's that.
Yeah, when you bring someone in like that, it's never just to spice up the show or to do something different, right? There's a purpose. And that purpose is written long before the character's introduced. And I think sometimes shows don't do that. They introduce the character and then they don't know what to do with them.
Oh, yeah.
Very specific, very purposeful, and you can tell with every single person who shows up, unless they're a one-off and you just don't know it.
Which, you poor thing, you're still a little bitter about that because I keep telling you, remember as much as you can.
Yeah. So even if anyone who lasts for more than an episode is there for a very specific purpose.
Very much so. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So should we talk a little bit about Cartagia, that the whole part of Centauri Prime and the Shadow War, and what that did to Jakar? Yeah, some important turning points here. I think it shows just how much the Centauri have fallen as a people, as a culture.
Yes.
Jakar really sums it up well when Cartagia's dead, everybody knows it, and the Narn are out there celebrating because now they're free again. And he says, but they are a lost people! He gets it. So why in the world would you model yourself after a civilization that's on the decline? No, the Narn need to be on the up and up.
Yes. And I think you can tell a lot about a people and a lot about a group and a lot about a culture by who they choose to lead them.
Sure. And so the system has become so corrupted that somebody like Cartagia can ascend with maybe few to no questions.
Yeah.
Certainly to take that power as he sees fit and then eventually elevate himself to godhood, because why not? Right.
And who's going to stop him? And that's the thing is who's going to stop him? And that's another big thing that I'm taking away from that. And certainly I'm not making any parallels to any current leaders anywhere in the world, right?
Right. Oh boy, Babylon 5, in its day when I was watching it, I felt a cautionary tale. Now that we're living in a lot of insanity in our world, it's downright prophetic.
Right. And so like just that idea of like, who does your culture choose to be your leader? And who's going to work with them to make sure that they're still accountable to the people that they're serving? And 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 we see that with the Centauri, and the weird thing is, like, when I first started watching this series, like season 1, and you start to realize there's this tension between the Centauri and the Narn, and you look at them. And the Narn are a much more intimidating looking presence. And so it was so odd to me, and I think a great choice, that the odd-looking ones with the weird bald heads and the poofy hair are the ones who are actually like the most aggressive and dominating
historically speaking.
And so it's this subversion again. It's this subversion of who's supposed to be in power and who's not. And then you get to Cartagia, who's kind of a like, thin, weak little dude, like stiff breeze would blow him over, and here he is cutting people's heads off and speaking to the gods. Again, it's that subversion that this is not what we expect from a group that just won a huge war. Right?
So are you saying that the physicality of a leader really does matter?
I'm saying that like the physicality of the leader like subverts the expectations. You expect the strong leader, the physically imposing one, and when it's not, that having that slight dude do what he did, it's again, it's a signal of a broken people.
Yeah, but then I look at John Sheridan, who is not a big, beefy man. I mean, if anybody, Stephen Franklin is by far the fittest and most delightful to look at. Especially, we got to talk about his dance moves, right? Somebody mentioned that in the comments. He's got some sweet dance moves. The end of the Shadow War, I want to believe it's Kaylin James he's dancing with, but that's not confirmed, but that's who I think it is before she expires, because we figured that out. But yeah, dude's built, you know. Richard Biggs definitely worked out, and unfortunately RIP. But anyway, Sheridan doesn't have this grand physicality to him, and yet he is the larger than life hero through his words and his moral center more than anything. But Cartaja has neither.
Yes. No.
He's just a psychopath.
Yeah. And somebody brought it up, you know, with Cartaja and Clark, you know, how do they get there? And you know,
lack of accountability a lot of times.
And is somebody born messed up, or do you create the monster? You know, and I think that's one of the things too. I think with Centauri is they might help create that monster.
Seems very likely, right? Just because of maybe some toxic culture in the royal court.
Yes.
Very disconnected from the way the Centauri people actually live. They're so insulated. It's almost incestuous in the way of how they work, as opposed to how the rest of their society works.
So can we talk about President Clark?
Let's talk about that.
We've kind of gone that direction with the chat.
Let's do it.
I'm down because, all right, anyone else draw this parallel between President Clark and the warden in Shawshank Redemption?
Oh, I had not made that parallel, but that's a really good one. Who else?
I don't know if anyone else made that parallel, but that was one of the ones that I made. You know, somebody who ends up, you know, committing suicide in their office because, you know, they've lost control of their power and don't know what to do without it. I mean, that's my take. And so when I think about that, I think about Clark being the one who's like the prison warden. You know, you got to keep people in line versus helping people flourish.
And well, I mean, people like that, they have to maintain that control to keep people flattened down, to feel hopeless so that they can continue their objectives.
Right.
I want to say hi to Mountains of Elysium. Hello. She often, he or she, I don't know if you're a male or female, it doesn't matter. You often pop in for Zocalo. Thank you for joining in.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Thanks for being here.
Yes.
And so can we talk about propaganda?
Oh, your favorite. ISN kind of took a turn this season, didn't it?
Yeah. You should see what ended up on the cutting room floor of the ISN episode.
You get this guy on a journalism rant.
Oh, man.
You can go all night.
Well, and there were lots of things with bleeps that we had to cut. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. There was one episode where I don't remember how many bleeps there were, but I just kept putting naughty, 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 naughty all over it.
It was probably that ISN episode. It was one of them anyway. But I think, again, no parallels to what's happening today, but I do think that the one of the challenges was where is propaganda going, right? How do we get a populace to follow what we want to do as leaders, right? And so that's where media manipulation comes in, and where propaganda comes in, and that's where I feel like kind of B5 was another product of its time, that it was more about controlling the message and making it an information poor society, because everyone's getting their information from basically like a limited number of sources.
US or Universe Today.
Universe Today, yeah, off their fax machines. Right? And I think one of the things we didn't anticipate, and I don't know that anyone could have anticipated it, was the rise of the information-rich society. and where it's not about necessarily trying to limit the truth. It's about letting the truth out there, but also getting so many lies out there that it's hard to see the truth. And
Oh, sure, yeah. And how are a lot of people to really know any different with limited information?
mm-hmm,
And especially
mm-hmm,
with what was once a trusted source of news, I'm thinking ISN in particular,
mm-hmm,
where that was considered a reliable source. Well, what happens when that source becomes state TV? And to an audience, they might say, oh, okay, this is a different message, and it clicks, but then that trust is still there. And so a
right,
lot of people's BS detectors aren't going off as much as they should be, and they're just not savvy enough to know that they're being bullshitted with propaganda. And
right.
yeah.
Well, which is part of why I chose teaching journalism as my career, my profession, like to help people through that, help people understand what they're actually seeing out there. So
Yeah. You've got your
so
work cut out for you.
yeah, but
But you're trying.
I did want to touch on that because it's important to me, and
Yeah. And it's in the
yeah,
story.
and it's in the story, and I saw it, and I was just like, yes, this is nice.
But I mean, also historically speaking, yes, for better or for worse, the media is a part of people's rise to power and what becomes popular and all of that.
Mhm,
And so it's
mhm,
important to put that in. And JMS is definitely a historical scholar. I mean, it's the same playbook
yes,
as what has happened in previous incarnations of what happens in the B5 story, what's happening right now with rising authoritarianism.
mhm.
It hasn't changed. So if
No,
you want to know what's going to happen, read
mm,
some history.
yeah,
It's scary.
yeah. Well,
I want to get to questions too.
yeah, let's do that.
Let's see. Andrew, you crossed a question off the list. I'm hoping that's about the media aspect. Let's see. Peter Evans says, was thinking Clark akin to Hitler in the bunker, believing the German people had failed him. Yep,
Mhm,
yep,
that's
yep.
a good one
That
too.
was Clark. Yeah, scorched earth, right?
Mhm,
And that's the thing is that's another thing JMS I feel got right is when those people know that they're at the end of their rope, they're not just going to take themselves down. They're going to take everybody else with them. That's the
right.
really scary part when they know it's really over.
Mhm.
Okay, so what else here? Da,
Mm.
da, 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 da.
So, yes, the voice of the resistance,
Oh, we ought to talk about
the
that. Yeah.
VOR.
My question to you and to everybody out here
Mhm.
is if you were an Earth citizen who really didn't know a whole lot better and you somehow got your hands on the voice of the resistance, would you believe what Susan Ivanova is saying?
I think that comes back to,
Media
again, media
literacy?
literacy, where it's what are the motivations of the people behind the mic, right?
Uh-huh.
The people behind the pen. What is their goal? And
Mhm.
and who's asking them or helping them or telling them what needs to be out there? And that's one of the challenges is deciphering that. And so if you are on Earth at this time and you somehow get that voice, what I hope it would do is challenge your presumptions about what ISN is, what the government is. I don't know that you believe it straight out, but you start to question things. And it's not
Okay.
that you need to have all the answers, but starting to ask the right questions is going to get you pretty far and starting to ask, well, is ISN telling the truth? Instead of saying ISN is telling the truth, the question is, are they? And
Okay. So it's opening up your mind to get the other perspective. And
mhm,
meanwhile, both sides may have their propaganda.
sure.
Usually the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? I
Mhm,
feel often when I'm reading current news from multiple sources because that's what you have to do anymore, right? Is you have to sift through so much BS to try and get the kernel of truth that's in there. And a lot
yes.
of people don't go to that effort
Mhm.
because it's exhausting.
It is. And so I know I have not seen broadcast news. I take that back. I've seen it, but it's been probably 15 years. I saw it in
Oh,
college,
okay.
but I haven't seen it since. So, but I do remember it being really good, and I wanted to revisit it. I just haven't got around to it. But yeah, I have watched it. One of those journalism movies you just watch while you study journalism, and yeah, it was a good one. But I haven't watched it in years. I don't really remember much about it.
Hmm. We ought to watch that sometime. I've not seen it.
Mhm. It's good stuff.
So, did you approve of Ivanova's social media skills? Do you think she did a good job doing Voice of the Resistance?
Well, let's first of all, it wasn't just her, right?
True, it is a group
wasn't
effort.
just her, but also
she is the face.
Yeah, she will be the face, and I think we've talked about it a little bit before. Ivanova carries with her a certain amount of uh, authority. That's the word I'm looking for. Authority. Like, she gives Sheridan credit. He knows who the camera likes and who the camera doesn't like.
Right. You have that trustworthy face.
Yeah, and he knew that a person in position of authority who's also, to put it kindly, a face you can trust, was going to probably go further than most people would in that position. So yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
And she has a good voice as well, and she has the delivery skills to make it worth the watching. I mean, you can have a great message, but if your people are just like, maybe they have a jarring voice, or unfortunately there is a reason why they put pretty people in front of the camera, because they're nice to look at.
Yes.
It does make a difference, I hate to say.
It does.
We got to acknowledge the harsh truth here.
Well, and lest we forget that somebody from Babylon 5 left and started doing work for CNN.
So, that's right. Andrea Thompson did it.
Yeah. So there is something that is to be said for that. And I mean, the whole face for radio thing.
This is why I do podcasts a lot of times.
There is an element of truth to that, sadly.
Yeah.
It's really sad that we're more likely to believe things that come from beautiful people.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It's a fault in our makeup that I don't think we fully understand yet. But we know enough that we know it's being exploited. Right?
Oh,
we
totally.
know that piece of our makeup is being exploited on a daily basis. So
yeah, it's totally true. It is. It's an awful human failing. We're very superficial. We like pretty things. We like them pretty and shiny, and as far as humans go, oftentimes young, which is another thing entirely. And let's move on.
Well, and I'm just going to put it this way: there's a reason why I read a lot more news than I watch.
Yeah.
I hardly ever watch TV news anymore.
Well, for one, it's really become a shit show, for lack of a better way of putting it. Somebody in the comments has said a lot of news is propaganda. It's Darman. Yeah, I really feel, especially with the bigger TV news networks, they have a mission to choose left or right. It's not about getting news out. It's about spouting off pundits' opinions, which you love so much. Let's not get into a rant.
We're going to stay away from that.
But that is what a lot of it is. And a lot of people now take opinion as fact. Yeah. And so what do you do when people don't even trust actual facts because they just think, well, that's just an opinion? And so the two are interchangeable in a lot of people's minds. Yeah. Where do you even go? Okay. Yeah.
Let's roll this back to Babylon 5.
Let's do that. How many Earthers do you suppose have actually traveled interstellar, met aliens? I love this comment, Peter.
It's a great thought.
Yeah, I have a feeling that a lot of people on Earth have not traveled. Very few people are tourists to Babylon 5. We did see one and walkabout, but even her views were very Earth-centric, and I don't care what President Clark do as long as the economy is running. A lot of people fall into that line of thinking, right? Whereas as long as things are good for them, there's not a problem. Yeah. So I have a feeling that the numbers of traveled Earthers is somewhat low, which makes me think when they have the presentation in the aftermath of the Earth Civil War, there's Jakar, Delenn, and Sheridan is making his formal resignation in front of everybody. How does that feel as to an Earther? Oh, now Earth is basically, trying to make friends with the aliens, and there's the flyover. This is a part that didn't make it into our vidcast.
Oh, yes.
Would you maybe not think that you're being attacked potentially by all these strange-looking ships you do not know where they're coming from? Maybe not the best move. I feel like that's 90s naivety a little bit. Today, I don't think that would happen because people would be like, "Oh my God, freak out!"
Yeah, well, and
you think about who you're working with here.
So maybe this is me projecting, but this is what the Minbari do, right? This is the
yes.
show of force.
It is. Guns open.
Guns open, right? It's the flyover, you're not being attacked, but we're showing you what an attack would look like. And
well, they're showing off their power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't totally get it, but at the same time, that's also just part of who they are. So
yeah. So I really wonder though what Earthers, how they felt about that as a gesture, because I have a feeling a lot of people didn't take very kindly to that.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's see, what else have we got here in the comments? Corwin. Corwin doesn't get a whole lot of love. He's just there in C&C trying to keep shit running, isn't he?
Yeah, poor dude. He needs to join with Veer and Lanier.
He does!
On their little once a week Friday lunch.
Yes, this is in my head canon where these guys get together for sure. Corwin needs to get in on that because I have a feeling he has a lot of thoughts and feelings he needs to get out, especially about Ivanova. He's deep down very afraid of her, I think.
Oh, yes.
And he really needs to deal with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So can we talk a little bit about, I mean, we haven't really even talked about Earth Force and the moral quandaries
we need to do that.
Faced and
sure. Let's say goodbye to Mountains of Elysium. Yes. Thank you for joining us if you're still here.
And the idea that everyone is making that moral decision at some point in the last 6 or 7 episodes. Everyone in Earth Force is kind of making that choice.
Yeah.
Everyone in Earth Gov is making that choice about whose side are you on, to steal a really old Union song, which side are you on? And it's so interesting to watch people make that breakdown, right? They make that decision on their own because nobody comes to it at once.
No, right? Sheridan was just the first. His hand was forced and he knew this is it. I have a choice to make. Breaks with Babylon 5 because his conscience won't let him do anything less.
Yeah, I did have this. I don't know if this ended up in the episode or not.
Yeah.
But Sheridan's breaking point, right, was when Earth Force started attacking civilian targets.
Yeah, more or less.
Right, and Ivanova comes in and is like,
oh, well, yeah, okay.
Yeah, says, Earth Force is attacking civilians. We got to do something. And Sheridan's like, you're right. We need to attack them. And she's like, what?
Oh, yeah, the way she freaked out a little bit.
And so
there were great comments about that, by the way.
Yes, there were. And so it was like, even Ivanova saying, hey, we got to do something, and Sheridan being the first to be like, this is an act of war. Everyone else kind of came to it in their own time. And I think very, very realistic. It's the media researcher, the person who teaches stuff is coming out of me again. It's a spiral of silence theory. If y'all have ever heard of that, where if you think you're in the minority, you're more likely to stay quiet.
It's true. It's really hard to speak up when you're not sure what other people are thinking. And so, what was great about season 4 is as things do kind of go on, you see more ships defecting to the voice of the resistance and the army of light. And because they have their crisis of conscience too. And for a soldier in Earth Force, the big thing is you do not attack civilians. That's kind of a line that you draw, right? It's supposed to be forces against forces, don't kill innocent people. And so when you have the government giving you orders now to do that, you have a choice to make. Do you follow your orders because you're a good soldier, or do you do what is morally in your heart, what you believe is right?
And the choice too is not just that, it's also then what's everyone else doing, right? What are other people doing, and how am I going to be judged for that decision? And that's where spiral of silence comes in, and that's where it's not just what's right for me, it's like what's right for everyone around me, and how I'm going to be judged for that decision, and how I'm going to be judged for the stance. And that carries a lot of weight. You got to be super, super morally strong to always make the right choice, to always stand by your moral grounding. And I'll admit I fall short of it sometimes, and that's part of why. It's because you've got to be willing
to lose everything.
Willing, yeah.
And we see this happen for Sheridan a couple of times where that's something I really like about him as a hero is he is a man of like his moral center is so strong that he is willing to break away from Earth in season 3 and stand alone. Let's not forget that Babylon 5 is alone with a lot of this. Yes, he has the backing of the League of Non-Aligned Worlds and the Minbari, all of this. But in terms of human relations, they're basically on their own and they're cut off from a lot of resources. That creates a lot of challenges. That's a lot of risk that he's willing to take to make that stand. And a lot of times, those people who step up first are the most likely to get sacrificed. Sheridan got lucky in that department for the most part. He gets 20 years.
Yeah. I think, I mean, even this is one of the things that I think underpins the entire series. And without having watched season 5,
not in its entirety,
that underpins the entire series is like having the courage to make those stands.
Right.
Having the moral conviction to stand up for what you know is right, not just what you think is right, but what you know is right.
Yeah, and it's very difficult. I have a feeling we're all, as people, either we have had to make that choice or we're going to. You know, it's probably the hardest thing that you ever have to do, and you've got to decide what's worth it and what's not.
So Darren makes a really good point too. You know, if you've already lost everything, like Jakar has,
right, then you really do have nothing to lose, and your choice becomes clear. It's true. And I feel like Sheridan does get brought to his knees a number of times.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the thing, though, is he's willing to die for this cause. And you can't beat someone who's willing to do that. I mean, he already endured the Inquisitor way back in season 2. He and Delenn, that's why they were the right people at the right time for the right job, right? That's why they were essentially chosen and let to do that work, because they were doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah. And
great comment by Pete Evans. Zach Allen embodies the spiral of silence. Yes, a lot of people get caught up in the middle, right? Where they might be thinking one thing, but they're doing another, and they're not sure what to do about it. As much as we make fun of Zach on the show, I do have some respect for the guy just because he is kind of the everyman who doesn't completely know everything that's going on. And he kind of gets thrown into the mix, and it's just like, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel kind of bad for him.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very, like, double-digit IQ kind of guy. But at the same time, he also, I think, he's good to have because he does represent that challenge, that quandary. Like, Sheridan has no problems making the stand. Other people do, and it's good to show that.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it's very necessary because it also shows that not everybody is a big hero. Not everybody is as larger than life. I can't talk anymore, you guys. Not everybody is larger than life. Like Sheridan and Delenn are kind of revered, and Garibaldi gets into it a little bit too, with where he feels Sheridan has that cult of personality, right?
Sure.
Well, Zach's never going to have a cult of personality. Now he does make some difficult choices, and in that sense, he does have some heroic actions, but they are small compared to the bigger picture. It's little things. But a lot of people doing little things also has an impact.
Yes.
Let's not forget that.
Yes.
Somebody asked earlier in the comments, did we watch In the Beginning before season 5? No. We went straight into season 5, and it's going to be up to this guy as to whether or not we watch the movies and possibly continue into watching the spin-off Crusade.
We've talked about it. No decisions yet. We want to finish season 5. And take a break of some kind and then figure out if we're going to do the movies or not. So. Yeah,
I completely want that to be your decision. If at the end of season 5 you say, you know what, this is a great place to end, I don't need to see anymore, and that's it, then that's it. Then we're done. That's fine. I'm totally on board with that. But if you do want to be a completionist and watch it all, we'll do that. And then we might do a thing where we maybe group 2 movies together, and maybe we do a live show. No idea. We're just contemplating ideas right now. So we have had a lot of conversation in the comments about the movies. A lot of people are saying, yes, you should watch them. Please watch them. Ultimately, you're the deciding factor.
Okay. Let's ask the Babylon 5 fans if I should watch the Babylon 5 things.
Might be a little biased.
Just a little bit, but that's okay. I appreciate it. I do appreciate that because I don't know yet. We probably will. I don't know if we'll do shows about them, but we'll probably watch them at some point.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the big question, is whether we're going to share that experience or not. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. I mean,
I think it'll be a lot easier to tell after season 5.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm personally really excited that we're already watching season 5. I cannot wait to see what you think about the very end. And then when we do our season 5 live show, where we don't have to worry too much about spoilers, we can talk about it all as a whole.
Yes.
Just don't spoil Crusade, I guess. Fine.
Well, and the other nice thing about it too is I am a completionist. I really am. You've lived with me long enough to know this, that I am a completionist. So
yeah, and I am too, especially with TV shows. Even when I really want to quit them, like when season 8 of The Office was really just like, guys, what are you doing? Had to see it through to the end, the very bitter end.
Yeah. Yeah, I've really only given up on one TV show in my life.
Wait, what was that?
It was ER.
Oh!
When I was a teenager watching ER in the 90s. And then I watched it up through 2003, and it just got weirder and weirder. And one episode I was watching, I realized I don't care about any of these people anymore.
And then why not part ways? Why are you wasting your time?
Yeah. So, good question here. New favorite season 4 character.
Ooh, yes, because R.I.P. Kosh. I don't know if people can see, but you're wearing your Kosh shirt. Yes.
Kosh 2.0, he's a hard pass.
Jerk.
Cartaja is a hard pass. Who else was new in season 4? Maybe y'all can help me out.
It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody new. It's just who really stepped up that you enjoyed. Because everybody kind of had some moments. Was it possibly Lita? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah,
though.
I mean, Lita's always been cool, but man, I was thinking about it. You know what was nice? Was seeing Lise.
Oh, yeah?
I'm seeing Lise for the first time. Now, we have some Lise rants coming in season 5, you guys.
Yes, we do. I just edited that episode.
Yeah, so we got some Lise rants coming, but it was nice to see that kind of like, not necessarily resolve itself, but like have a payoff. It was nice to have some kind of payoff to that. So that was cool.
And a quick one at that. Oh my gosh, this lady goes through dudes like water. I mean, I'm not saying, I'm just saying. I mean, she and Garibaldi hit the sack pretty quick, okay?
Yeah. Now, that's, we haven't even really talked about Garibaldi. We kind of touched on it at the beginning, but you know, his mind wipe and Bester and Edgar's Industries and coming telepath war. Like I want to lead into that because I think we've said it already. Garibaldi's reacceptance into the inner circle was really fast.
Yeah,
and it kind of like
probably a casualty of having to rush the season.
Yeah, it kind of pissed me off because it was that storyline resolved itself way too fast. It really did. Like to have it go all season and then in about 2 minutes, all of a sudden it's resolved. I didn't sit well with me, but
he did prove himself to Lita.
Yeah,
at the very least, he was telling the truth. It's just after a whole season of really wondering what the hell is going on with this guy, and we find out the truth, and we realize, no, it's not his fault. We do want to sympathize with him, but that doesn't mean the other characters should so fast.
Right. Yeah. And so where I want to go with this chat right now is to a coming telepath war, and to talk about Lita a little bit because I think she represents something bigger that's going down.
Oh, yeah?
Right. She's representing like this discontent being used and, by, what do we call it? Mundanes.
Yes.
The mundanes, the normals, like the lack of appreciation and that's very purposeful, I think, as a storytelling device. That
yeah.
That this is going to be a thing.
Yeah, definitely. The telepaths have got something to do with season 5. Again, no spoilers, but from what we have seen, they're a prominent element right now in Babylon 5. So obviously something's being set up, right?
Right.
And Lita's going to be a part of it.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and no matter what side she's on, they're gonna win.
You think?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Lita's side's going to win.
I mean, well, I don't want to speculate too much just because we are going to film a couple more episodes later today because we're trying to ramp up for season 5. I want to kind of interject a little bit and talk a little bit about what's to come for Babble for 5.
Oh, yes.
So normally we take a little bit of a break between seasons so that we can ramp up our production, get a few episodes edited and ready to publish. And that way we're not on just writing on the seat of our pants every single week because we have lives, we both work, we both have things that we have to do. And so to keep on top of it for 22 episodes ago, I mean, even though they're 5 minutes long, there is work that goes into it. I know it doesn't look like it, but but it really does. I mean, we have the filming, we've got the editing, and we still struggle sometimes to do a really good job with that. But darn if we're not trying. It's just the two of us, you know. We don't have anybody there saying, hey, somebody's not in focus. We figure that out after the fact when we thought everything was good and it wasn't. So apologies. Shit happens.
But it's going to be better in season 5. We figured out some camera settings.
We did. Yeah, I think what happened is our camera reset a little bit and it went to a really low f-stop. And anyway, that's neither here nor there right now. We realized that to coincide our Sleeping in Light, the finale episode of Babble for 5, to air it about this time that Sleeping in Light did air, it's November 23rd. November 23rd in 2020 falls in the middle of the week, so we had two choices. I believe if we start next week with episode 1 of season 5, we will air our last episode of season 5 on November 29th. So we're going to do it. That means we have a lot of work to do in the next couple of weeks to try and ramp up and stay on top of things. We're going to do it. We're going to sprint to the finish. We're going to do this.
Yeah. So our break is going to be, normally we have like 3 weeks or 4 weeks that we take off between seasons. Not this time. We are diving right back in to season 5 because we want to hit that. And we want to hit that milestone that I didn't even know existed. She figured it out. She's the smart one of the bunch.
I just looked at a calendar.
Yeah, and still, I mean, you thought to look at a calendar.
Yeah, but I didn't do it until I realized, we only have a couple weeks, so can't be that smart.
But it is going to happen, and we're going to keep moving in that direction. So, absolutely headed that way, and it's going to happen. So it's. I don't know what else to say to it, but we're the break's going to be shorter, and we're gonna finish this thing.
Yeah, no waiting for you guys, so that'll be fun, and that'll be kind of nice. It kind of keeps up the momentum because every week we're noticing a lot of comments every single week, which is fantastic. It makes our day. We appreciate you so much for taking the time, one, to watch, but then also just to share some thoughts. And some of you guys come up with either really thought-provoking and like, hey, I never even thought about that. That's the gift that keeps on giving, right? Is a show that's 25 years old can still make you think differently, which is great. Or downright hilarious. You guys come up with some really entertaining stuff. Thank you. Makes my day. So, yes, let's see. Let's get into some comments right before the end here. One thing about rush storytelling, and I don't know if it was you, Peter, or if it was somebody else, but somebody said the Minbari Civil War felt really rushed because there wasn't enough real build up to make us care a whole lot. And I agree that needed some room to breathe. And we could have gotten more out of it if we hadn't had such a crunch season. Now, it's really exciting. But of course, those of us who have been around, we know that season 4 was supposed to be a little spread out. It was supposed to end with Sheridan's interrogation. And then we would have concluded the Earth Civil War at the start of season 5. So we might have not had as much with the telepaths in season 5. That might have been cut short as a result. But anyway, that's how things happened. And I do feel like also with Naroon, it's a really quick turn where I suddenly realize I am a religious cast member. Okay.
Yeah, that was, all I wrote was the phrase, well, okay then.
Yeah. Now, Darman has a comment where he liked that, which is great because we just have to kind of go with it. But I wish we could have maybe had just a little more lead up to hint because JMS is so good at dropping hints. Yeah, I think our only real hint was that the hero wasn't going to be Shakiri. He's warrior, warrior, warrior.
Yes.
And he wanted to gloat. So then in steps Naroon. That's about the only thing I can think of that was maybe a giveaway in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to seen more with that, and I think we talked about it in the episode where in season 1, that's an entire like 10 episode arc.
It could have been. It really could have been. Yeah. Yeah, and it could have been really interesting to get into more Minbari culture, especially when Delenn does recreate the 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 Grey Council, where it's now a little more dominant for the workers who've been largely ignored, but doing all the freaking work as usual.
Yes.
Yes. So anyway, let's see.
So will we make it a Babble for 7? This is part of why we do an hour long at the end, is so we can address some of the things that we didn't have a chance to address and to go a little bit deeper. And we love that you're here for it. So
yeah, we do. And there's been a lot of times, especially in season 4, where absolutely we could have gone Babble for 50. But we knew going in, at least I knew going in, that the show, limiting it to 5 minutes and making it a real bite-sized portion of a very rich story overall was going to be difficult, and we were going to miss things. It was done with some intention, just because I did want things to continue in the comments. I wanted it to be a starting point, not a comprehensive recap.
Yes, absolutely.
So even though it's sometimes a painful process, I thought, no, let's try it. Let's do it. One, also just because editing is work.
Yes.
A lot of work. But then also there was that intention of, we're going to start the fight and then we're not going to finish it. If I can pervert a phrase from John Sheridan.
Yes. So that said, we've been here for an hour. I think it might be time to have the discussion continue in the comments.
Hey, we can do that. And also, we're going to be jumping right into season 5. So we're going to have the conversation just continuing as we continue.
Yes. And a quick shout out to everyone who was here today. Thank you so much. If you're watching this on a recording, you made it through an hour of us. That's awesome.
Blathering on.
That's awesome. That's
thank you for tuning
in. And from my heart, thank you for being so accepting of me. Personally being so open and so warm and so just you just taking me as I am and knowing that this is not my bag and still letting me be a part of this community has been a real blessing, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's something that B5 fans are not afraid to do, is to welcome newcomers. We need newcomers to continue appreciating this show, because we're not going to be around forever. We got to keep this flame lit. And I thank you for putting yourself out there as a first timer and putting all your crazy theories out there. A lot of them get shot down, but then sometimes you'll say something that is so dead on. I'm just like, did you read spoilers? Did you get onto Lurker's Guide?
Nope.
Because sometimes you're dead right. And it's interesting to know what you do get right and where you completely go off the mark. It's so much fun.
Well, thank you.
No, thank you for doing this with me. It's a joy. I love that you wanted to do this, that we're kind of cataloging this whole thing. And we've got people here who are into it.
Yeah.
I never really imagined that. I didn't know if anybody was going to care. I just thought we'd do this thing. And boy, did we start off really rough.
Yeah.
We didn't know anything about video, editing, lighting, none of that. We just did it. We threw it out there. You've seen all of our imperfections along the way, and we thank you very much for putting up with it.
Yes.
And coming along for the content, not the quality necessarily.
Yeah. Well, we really do appreciate it. This was a idea that I came up with this idea just I was making jokes. I was making puns, and and Babble for 5 was one of those puns, and all of a sudden it became a thing. And so appreciate it, and I appreciate you for letting me do this too.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, we know that you guys need to go. We should probably go. We're going to make a couple more episodes of Babble for 5 for you all and us. And so we're going to find out what happens next. Thank you so much for tuning in. This was fantastic. We could probably go all day, but we'll do it again at the end of season 5, where we can have a massive celebration completing the 5-year journey, where very little spoiler security is going to have to be in play, and we can speak a lot more freely.
Yes. Awesome.
Finally.
Well, thanks again, everyone. Appreciate it, and hopefully you're still with us for season 5.
Yes, please stay tuned. Thanks, you guys. Have a good day. We'll see you next week.